Puedes cambiar el mundo tan solo en un instante. Puedes cambiar de rumbo si quieres que eso pase.
अपने अंदर देखो और समझो तो पूरी सृष्टि सपनों को पूरा करेगी.
Cambiar el mundo empieza por ti.
Verás que los colores son mucho más brillantes. Verás con otros ojos la magia en todas partes.
Arriba y adelante se ven los horizontes.
태양이 다시 태어나면 사랑도 다시 태어날 거야.
Cambiar el mundo empieza por ti.
Ich will neuen Himmel, dann fang ich selber an und spreche einen Lob aus für die Menschheit. Dann fange ich an. Empieza por ti. Puoi cambiare oggi stesso il corso del tuo viaggio. Vedrai che non è uguale se hai coraggio. Hoch naar Bitadima, Liras Golhafen, Hashem Yeshuf Torafat, האנושות חייבת. Cambiar el mundo empieza por ti. Empieza por ti. Ça peut changer.
If I want a new sky, I'll be the first to begin.
Поднять на славу всему человечеству. Empieza por mí.
Si quieres cielo nuevo, empiezo yo primero y debo una alabanza hacia la humanidad.
Dann fange ich an.
Empiezo por ti.
Empieza por ti. C'est comme
Elegimos dedicarnos a la felicidad, porque la felicidad es la vacuna psicológica de nuestros tiempos. Las crisis son el momento indicado para reconocer nuestras fortalezas y descubrir nuestro ingenio para superar la adversidad. Hoy es tu momento de crecer, es tu momento de crear y de reinventarte. IBI es parte de tu equipo y trabajamos contigo para apoyarte y lograr lo inimaginable en tu organización. Apoyamos a los mejores líderes, a los que han elegido darlo todo por su equipo, por sus sueños, por su mundo. IBI es tu aliado. Elige la felicidad. Buenas noches a todos. Es un gusto enorme darles la bienvenida a este webinar con nuestro gran invitado, el doctor Ben-Shahar. El Instituto Bienestar Integral, pues, es un lugar en donde estamos construyendo una comunidad de gente con ganas de cambiar al mundo, gente con ganas de contribuir a formar personas de mayor bienestar, a construir vidas con más significado y poder realmente dejar una huella positiva en la gente que nos rodea. Tengo el gran honor de presentarles a ustedes y de contar esta noche con el doctor Ben-Shahar, mi maestro, mi mentor, un amigo, puedo decir ahora, y me da mucho gusto. Ben-Shahar es reconocido internacionalmente como el maestro de maestros en el campo de la felicidad y el liderazgo. Después de graduarse de Harvard, él enseñó uno de los cursos más populares en la historia de Harvard acerca de psicología positiva y psicología de liderazgo. Fundó después el Happiness Studies Academy, en donde ofrece un certificado en estudios de la felicidad, y para el mundo de habla hispana lo ofrecemos también nosotros, el Instituto de Bienestar Integral, en conjunto con Happiness Studies Academy. Y ahora Ben-Shahar ha traído una nueva propuesta al mundo de la primer maestría en estudios de la felicidad que se ofrece a través de Happiness Studies Academy y Centenary University, y donde tengo el gran privilegio de ser parte del equipo de maestros. Tal ha escrito numerosos libros que se han estado ofreciendo y alrededor del mundo, y se han traducido en muchos idiomas. Y bueno, es realmente un gran honor poder contar con la presencia de Ben-Shahar. Bienvenido, Tal. ¿Nos escuchas? Sí. Can you hear us, Tal?
Now I can hear you,
okay.
not the translation, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, Iván, ahí te encargamos la traducción. Para los que se conectaron, pueden elegir la traducción simultánea con mucho gusto, apretando en el icono del mundo, y pueden ahí elegir el idioma en el que quieren hablar. Ahora voy a empezar a hablar en inglés para que Tal pueda entenderme. So, welcome, Tal. It's such an honor for me to share this webinar with you and with our community. And I wanted to start a little different than how we usually start, because I usually go right ahead to ask you some questions, but this topic is especially relevant and interesting to me, and I wanted to share a story about my own life with you. So it was one of such days in which waking up seemed like an uphill battle to me. And this had happened to me before, so I knew there was hope and not everything was lost. Nonetheless, the internal voices in my head continue rumbling about the outer world and my role in it. An inner battle of hope and lack of faith, of optimism and despair, of all or nothing thinking. And those thoughts confronted me with an outstanding responsibility and longing to make the world a better place, while recognizing the fragile encounter between humility and the unknown. And as I was waking up that morning with these feelings and thoughts in my head, a message from my friend Mario showed up in my WhatsApp, in which he shared with me some news that reminded me of the greatness of existence and about the immense choice we have in shaping our lives and the lives of others. A year and a half earlier, Mario, who was originally from Guatemala, shared with me that he was planning to join the caravan of migrants that were entering Mexico from Guatemala and Central America, and which aimed towards the US. And since I was based in Mexico and the migration was going to pass by, Mario asked me if I could help. I agreed, but unlike me, I agreed with a lot of inner resistance. 10 years earlier, I had devoted about 10 years of my life to social projects which involved working with individuals and communities living in extreme poverty in Mexico. And I knew very well the psychological and spiritual toll that such work had on me. That day in November, when Mario called me, I agreed to help him in his journey without a deep conviction and without a heartfelt willingness to do so. I must admit that I aimed not to disappoint him or myself because I consider myself to be altruistic. I had to walk my talk even if this time I didn't feel like doing it. But I'm so glad I did. I ended up meeting Mario and a family of migrants whom he met during his trajectory and whom he invited to ride with him in the taxi that he had rented. That couple had been walking for 3 full days, sleeping on the highway, taking care of the few belongings they could carry with their own hands, and a small and fragile stroller that helped them transport their baby. After we volunteered in the refugee camp that day, Mario, my mother, and this couple with the baby, as well as the taxi driver, we ended up trying to help this family and were able to help them enter legally to the US with the help of an NGO. But back where my story began, that day when I couldn't wake up, I had forgotten completely about this story. And I got a message from Mario, remember, that morning, and he said, "Hi, Arlen, look how they named their second baby girl. Arlen Marisabel." And above the message, it said, "You see, Mario, those people who help us leave a mark in our lives forever." I could not believe my eyes. I had forgotten completely about this event in my life, and they named their baby after Mario and after me because of this event in their lives. And a thought came to me that reminded me of a quote in the Talmud, which says, "He who saves the life of one man saves the entire world." I do not believe that we saved their lives, but their destiny was shaped by our interaction. That morning, when I received such a message, all the questions I had diluted into wholeness. I understood that oftentimes we are blinded to the beauty of connection, intuition, courage, bravery, and humility, of the seamless threads of miracles that take place day in and day out in our world. Oftentimes we forget about the true nature of our hearts when we care, when we dare to look, when we are brave enough to go through our own resistance and choose to stretch our wings without knowing that by doing so, we might become someone's guardian angel. Mario, the driver, the family, my mom, and me were all bounded together through this story. And now a newborn child named after us, reminding his parents and us that miracles take place in this world. Since then, I try to remember this story every time I find myself doubting. For you see, our power to change ourselves and the world around us is far greater than we think. And this is the story I wanted to share because I think with the situation that we're facing in our world today, it is pretty easy to lose faith. And sometimes we have such great expectations of what needs to happen for the world to change that it's very difficult for us to take that first step. I don't know if I don't know, Tal, if you
what?
are there, if you could hear the
Yeah, yeah.
story.
I'm right
Oh.
next to you. Yes.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to share, and that's what I wanted to begin the conversation with.
So I'd never heard this story before. It's and we've known each other for many years, and I'm glad I got to hear it with so many. It's very moving, and I think it has so many rich and important elements in it. And again, this is my first time hearing it, but maybe I can say a few words about it. Fresh. So first, and you bring this point up, the idea of how, something seemingly small can trickle, like a butterfly flapping its wings, can trickle and have a large and significant effect. And, it reminds me of the story that I would often tell about smiles, and how when you smile at someone, and that someone smiles at 3 other people, and these 3 people each smile at 3 other people, and those 9 then smile at 3 other people each, and then 27 each smile at 3 more people, 81. Within 21 times, 21 rounds, the whole world is smiling. So one act, one small act, through the exponential impact, can affect the entire world. And we never know what we do, what impact it will have. And, especially during difficult times, challenging times, uncertain times, it's very easy to wake up in the morning and say, what's the point? Why do what I do? Why work hard? There are so many people who are struggling. And you need to remind yourself that that small act, the equivalent of, you save one life, or you make one life better, or you contribute to one person, even if it's in a small way, that can have a radical impact on their lives, and through that on so many other lives. And that's the healthy, right, and only way to live. Otherwise, many of us would be stuck with a sense of hopelessness. There is a story that I'm sure some of you on this call have heard before, which, your story, Arlen, reminded me of. I read it for the first time in the book Chicken Soup for the Soul. And the story is about, a person who's walking on the beach, and I think it was actually in Mexico. And suddenly he sees someone picking up starfish and throwing it back to the water. And then picking up another starfish that had come in with the tide and throwing it to the water. And then another starfish, and there are thousands of these starfish on the shore. And the person who saw that other person lifting the starfish says to him, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm throwing the starfish back into the water because they'll die if they stay outside. He said, yeah, but what difference can you make? There are thousands of them on the beach. And of course, what the person says as he picks up a starfish and throws it back to the sea, says, it made a difference to this one. And this is the way to think about our life. Yeah, maybe we can't change the whole world. Maybe, times are, not maybe, times are difficult and challenging. But if we can make a difference to to two parents and a baby, or to a friend, or to a family member, and do good, then very often that good will ripple through time, and it could be 10 years later that we see the impact, and it could also ripple in space so that it affects other people and other people.
Yeah, I think that ripple effect, it's absolutely true, because oftentimes, when we see somebody else helping out, or like picking up the garbage, suddenly we find, like we want to do it as well. It becomes an inspiration. And it makes me think about, what are the principles of positive psychology, or the science of happiness, in terms of, on the one hand, cultivating inner resources to be able to sustain and to be, to take part of this world, even if the world is not as perfect as we would like to see, in order to, in Spanish, we say tirar la toalla, no? Like throw the towel. Like, what's the purpose of me picking up this piece of paper if there are 1,000, trash, if there is so much trash in the world. So on the one hand, positive psychology teaches us about what we can do inside of our heads, inside of our body, to be able to be more resilient, and to be able to withstand and thrive even in hardship. And there are also a lot of theories, and it has been studied that also, when we start working in our community, when we start doing things and giving, we define ourselves by the acts of kindness and or not kindness, but we become defined by our own acts. So there is like a combination of two factors. One is working from within to become, stronger, to balance our bodies, our energy, to be in a space where we can offer something to the world, let's put it that way. And sometimes, for example, in my specific case, when I do things for others, and when I focus on goals that are also external to my own goals, I start becoming fulfilled, and I become more optimistic, and my hope goes up. So I wanted to see what are your ideas, and what are the principles that you find when you think about these two concepts that have to do with living a better life, and also building a better life for others.
Yeah. So, as you're talking, Arlen, I'm thinking of a lot of the research that has been done on at-risk population. So people who come from, poor areas, oppressed areas, people who come from areas where there is a lot of drugs and crime, and what we call at-risk population. And there's been a lot of research, of course, on how can we best help them. And for many years, the research, by and large, showed that the intervention programs failed. That most of the psychologists or sociologists who would come into these areas trying to help those children or adults failed in their attempts. The big breakthrough came when they entirely changed their approach. Their approach was initially, let's go in there and help them. Let's go in and give, everyone free lunch. Let's help, everyone. Let's help them build a home. And, these things helped and they were important. And sometimes, without that lunch, they wouldn't eat anything. So, of course, that was important. But that didn't help, certainly not in the long term, until they changed their approach. And instead of going into these neighborhoods and helping those individuals, they went into these neighborhoods and helped those individuals help others. In other words, they got those people who were perhaps oppressed, those people who were poor, who were living in dire, terrible conditions. They focused mostly on helping them help others. And that made all the difference. Why? Because, one of your teachers, one of my teachers is Martin Seligman. And Martin Seligman is very well known around the world for creating the field of positive psychology. But before he introduced the field of positive psychology, which was in 1998, for decades, for about 30 years, he had done research on depression. And what he found specifically was that depression is defined, in his words, as learned helplessness. When we learn that we are helpless, that's when we become depressed. Because as long as we feel like we can do something, then we may be sad, we may be frustrated, but we don't throw in the towel because we can still do something. But as soon as we learn that we're helpless or believe that we are helpless, that's when we throw in the towel. That's when we become depressed. Now, many from those neighborhoods, the poor neighborhoods, are depressed because they have learned to be helpless. They have learned that no matter what they do, they'll just stay poor. They'll continue to struggle. The gangs will continue to do what they do. The drugs will continue to flow into their neighborhoods. Nothing they can do about it. They're helpless. They're depressed. They continue the same downward spiral. However, if suddenly now they begin to help others, they contribute to others, they're making a difference in other people's lives. And even if it's a small difference, they shift from being helpless to being helpful. They shift from being helpless to being helpful. And that makes all the difference because that energizes them. And Arlen, this is what you've described about yourself. It doesn't just apply to people living in at-risk populations. It applies to you, me, and everyone on this call. One of my teachers, whose picture is right here on my wall, is Warren Bennis. He passed away, 5 years ago, longer maybe. And Warren Bennis had his favorite phrase, and he said, we all want to be of use. To be of use. In other words, to be helpful. And whether it's to be of use, helping someone over the border, or giving someone a meal, or teaching someone happiness, or teaching someone how to read and write. To be of use. That's when we're helpful. And it's when we're helpful, that is when we're also energized, motivated to do even more.
Yeah, that summarizes also the work of Isaac Pilatelsky that talks about mattering, the importance to feel that you are able to contribute and that you are valued by people around you and you're helpful. And in terms of helplessness and optimism and pessimism, I think one of the key elements has to do with self-efficacy and the principle of agency, which is feeling that you have the power to do something about your situation or the situation around you. And so for me, for example, that I've been thinking so much about this topic, and I think most of the people that have joined us today might wonder many times, well, the world seems crazy. Things are, much heavier than I would like to see. And I am just this little person in the middle of a world with billions of people. What can I do? And sometimes we think, is what I can do as an individual valuable enough? Will it really make a difference? And I think one of the main components when we think about agency has to do with building our hope and elevating the idea that the world can be a little better. And if we all contribute, then the world can get much better, which is like this butterfly effect. So the antidote for helplessness, it's not being hopeful, but it's taking action, because action is what makes you hopeful.
Yes, it's Arlen, I want to share another story that gets, I think, to your point, that to my mind, a profound way. And this is a story I heard about a rabbi. So, a spiritual leader of a community. And this rabbi lived in New York City back in the 1930s, I believe. And this rabbi had a very large community of, and thousands of people would come in every day to listen to this rabbi, because his speeches were, world famous. And, unlike today, there was no Zoom. So people had to physically come to his, house of learning, a yeshiva. They would have to come there and they would have to hear, and they would listen to his sermon every day. Thousands of people from all over New York, US, and even the world. And one day there was a snowstorm in New York, and a very severe snowstorm. And all the, the underground, the subway was closed and the roads were closed. People couldn't get to his house of learning. And only 4 people showed up to the lecture. So the people who showed up thought, okay, so, he'll postpone it. We'll come in tomorrow. And then he started to give his speech. And not only did he start to give his speech, he gave his speech in the exact same way that he did every day, meaning with passion, with inspiration, with motivation. And he spoke as if he was addressing, a full house. There were 4 people in a place that could hold thousands of people. But he was his usual self. And it was amazing and inspiring. And it seemed like fire was coming out of the sky. And at the end of this amazing presentation, one of the 4 students, walks up to him, the great rabbi. Maybe it's the first time he ever gets to speak to him. He gets up in awe. And he says to the rabbi, thank you so much for this incredible sermon. But Rabbi, how is it that you did that? I mean, there were 4 of us and you brought such energy, such passion. And there were just 4 of us in the audience. And the rabbi looks at him and says, 4? I saw thousands in the audience. There were thousands in the audience because I saw you, and I also saw your children, and I saw your students and their students and their students who could potentially be affected by these words. 4, there were thousands. And this story has been on my mind, in my heart for years. And whenever I wake up thinking, I'm tired, I don't want to go out and teach, what difference is it going to make? I think thousands. And what a privilege it is. Now, the thing is, you don't have to be a great rabbi with thousands of students to have this effect. Because what we also know is that something like kindness is contagious. We know there's a lot of research showing that if I observe an act of kindness in another, I'm much more likely to act kindly subsequently. If I see someone treating another with respect, I'm much more likely to then treat another person with respect. Because goodness, kindness, generosity, they're all contagious. And when we commit one act of kindness, we are really affecting thousands.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And I really appreciate that beautiful story that you shared. And I think, well, I would love to open the floor, to get some questions from the people who are here with us. And just say that it is truly by doing where we start defining who we are. And the moment we start, hesitating and doubting, I think this has to do with all your teachings around perfection, because sometimes our expectations are so high that we feel we'll never get there, or we'll never be able to achieve any result or to produce any different outcome in the world. So by embracing our humanity and by becoming humble, I think that's the way that we can start with small actions that eventually, and combined with many other people's actions, can really have an important shift around the world. So, yeah.
And it's even, Arlen, even if it's a small act, but it has to be an act. It's not enough that it stays here. We have to bring it out to the world. Because when we bring it out to the world, we're communicating to the people around us, and kindness, goodness, they're contagious. We're also communicating to ourselves. And that strengthens us, gives us courage, makes us be strong, makes us be courageous. It introduces all these traits and characteristics, our behavior does, introduces it inside, but only if we bring the action outside.
Yeah. Thank you, Tao. So, Franklin, bienvenido, qué gusto verte. Adelante con tu pregunta.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to unmute myself, but the host wouldn't let me do it. Now I did it. Hi, Tao. Hi, Arlen. Thank you for this conversation. I'll try to put the right words in my mouth to ask this question. Forgive me if I can't. I know and I believe and I live that kindness is contagious. I also believe, Tao, that the opposite, that some people believe that the opposite is true as well. Especially in the political scene, are now not showing compassion and not showing kindness and being rough and tough is fashionable, and let's not help immigrants in the States, for example, just as an example. And I mentioned that because that's the example that Arlen beautifully mentioned. But for some people, it's okay not to show compassion, and it will give them votes or a way of living that they consider is better. So for those of us who believe that kindness is contagious, we can certainly get this message that we're talking here. But how do we reach those people who believe the opposite? And especially when we are suffering of polarization, We are the good people and the rest of the people are the bad people. We are the ones who are right and the rest are wrong. So how do we reach those people who believe that kindness is not worth it and compassion shouldn't be happening in the world?
Yeah. So Franklin, unfortunately, unkindness or cruelty even are also contagious.
Mm.
And when we see examples, when children see examples of their leaders, political leaders on TV, acting unkindly, or when we see a lot of cruelty and unkindness among nations or among groups, then this has an effect as well. However, in this war of kindness against unkindness, or if you will, good against evil, in this war, good or the good or kindness has a significant advantage. And that advantage has to do with happiness. There has never been, and there will not be, an unkind person or someone who's evil who is happy. For two reasons. One, it's because in order to harm someone else, that action has to come from an unhappy place. Someone who is happy will not go out and harm other people. They have better things to do with their time. It is people who themselves are hurt that go out and hurt other people. And then when they hurt other people, that in turn makes them feel worse about themselves. So causing harm, hurting, being unkind comes from a place of hurt and further hurts those who act in accordance. Whereas being kind, being good, being generous may or may not come from happiness. More chances that it is, but sometimes it doesn't. But what it always does is it generates more happiness. So just like both kindness and unkindness are contagious when it affects outside or when the outside affects us, kindness is contagious internally. In other words, when I act kindly, I enjoy it. I feel better about myself. I feel better about myself. I'm more likely to act kindly. I act kindly again, I'm going to feel better. I feel better, I'm more likely to act kindly, and on in an upward spiral. So internally, it's contagious. And when it comes to unkind behavior, it doesn't have the same effect. So it's a lot easier to stop unkindness with kindness. And this is equivalent to the metaphor of darkness and light. Sometimes all you need is one candle to banish darkness from an entire room. And in the same way, sometimes you need one courageous, kind act to drive unkindness away. That's the advantage that kindness has over unkindness in its connection to happiness.
And
And-
sorry.
Please go ahead.
No, I just, but I interrupted you. You had some.
No, I was just going to reinforce that point, that when we act kindly, we are reinforcing people outside, and we're also reinforcing our own behavior. And it's through happiness that this self-reinforcement happens.
Yeah, and I was going to add that in the same way, for example, Barbara Fredrickson talks about positive and negative emotions and how we have to intentionally create more positive emotions in our daily lives. We need as a society to intentionally become more actively engaged in acts of kindness and in acts that benefit the common good, because we need to multiply our efforts in order to be able in a way to make goodness, to enhance goodness in the world, because it is true. What do we hear in the news? Like anything wrong that happens around the world is voiced 1,000 times, and the goodness that happens in our world is silent. So we need as a society to make an effort to intentionally do more good for others. And I believe also in politics, and Franklin, you talked about politics. We have, in a way, interpreted being involved in politics or in the government as something dirty and not desirable. And Aristotle said that we can only become the best people we can be. I don't remember the exact quote he used, but he said we need to involve ourselves in politics because we need to be active agents and shape the reality of our country, our community, our family. And we have to do that with a great intention in order to bring about change, because you're right, any small act of unkindness or harm suddenly hijacks the whole world's attention. And we need to scream goodness. We need to make a commitment to scream goodness. Agustín, por favor.
Gracias. Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Bueno, pues gracias por la oportunidad, en primer lugar, para poder conversar con ustedes este tema que realmente me hace muy interesante. Despertar la conciencia del ser humano es algo invaluable, es algo que estamos tratando de atender, pero dadas las características digitales de nuestro tiempo, cada vez se está perdiendo más. ¿Por qué? Porque estamos inmersos en el teléfono, en el celular, en la tableta, en la computadora, tratando siempre de innovar plataformas, programas, etcétera, etcétera. Y eso, pues, nos está perdiendo. Realmente, cuando uno descubre que este tipo de situaciones se están perdiendo, pues es momento de la reflexión. Hay que pensar realmente cómo es nuestra cultura, qué es lo que nos están pidiendo ahora para poder desarrollarnos, primero como individuos, después para sentir la satisfacción de que lo que estamos haciendo, lo estamos haciendo bien, pero con la satisfacción de ser humano, de que la necesidad ha sido cubierta. Sin embargo, eso queda en el vacío. Los valores se están perdiendo. Lo que en un inicio nos inculcaron nuestros padres, prácticamente están siendo olvidados. La tecnología nos lo está arrebatando. Y realmente, cuando uno se pone a analizar cómo es nuestra cultura personal, descubrimos que lo primero que nos inculcan en casa es el aspecto religioso, que casi ya nadie usa, casi nadie atiende. Pero de ahí se derivan los valores. Los valores, el bien y el mal, están inculcados con esa base religiosa. Después viene la educación. Cada región del planeta tiene un tipo de educación y en función de esa educación es el comportamiento. Y de ahí se derivan formas de socialización como la política que se acaba de hablar, como el derecho. Hay personas que dicen, pues si yo no tengo un papel donde hago la transacción, no te vendo nada. Y hay quienes dicen, mi palabra es ley y con eso basta. Entonces hay contradicciones en este sentido. A veces no se entiende ni la ciencia. Hay gente en este momento que no sabe que si existe el cambio climático o no. Y dice, órale, pues si estamos viendo cómo son los cambios y dices tú que no hay cambio climático. Y por supuesto, pues la filosofía del lugar dice, hay que atender como yo sé, pero no como tú me inculques. Y justo eso, ver cómo se atiende la generosidad, pues a veces deja mucho que desear porque para unos la generosidad tiene un sentido y otros para otro en otro sentido, y esto hace que no tengamos muy claro ese concepto y por consiguiente nuestra felicidad pues es muy ambigua porque a veces la tenemos pero no obtenemos lo que en sí pudiera darse como lo tenemos pensado. A veces la tenemos a medias y de ahí la frustración. Y bueno,
Agustín,
pues esto es
perdón.
algo hasta ahí. Gracias.
No, gracias, Agustín. Me recordaste un poco esta parte tecnológica también, donde de pronto sentimos que nuestra contribución está por darle un like en Facebook, como que la tecnología de pronto nos hace sentir que contribuimos también más de lo que en realidad contribuimos, y también de alguna manera es una barrera a hacer actos de bondad ahí en la calle, ¿no? Y a construir en personas de forma directa. I don't know, Tal, if you wanted to add any comments around this.
Yeah, Agustin, when you were talking, I was reminded of something that I actually spoke with our students this morning, and it was about education and the importance of education. And Agustin, you said that in the past we would study through religion, or we would study, we would have common stories that were part of our culture. And today we don't have those, stories, children's stories where we learned about kindness, or biblical stories where we learned about goodness. And not having this education is problematic because we do not have a common language anymore. And you go to the Bible, to the story of Babel, the Tower of Babel. And the Tower of Babel is a story where the punishment of the people who tried to reach, God, was that they couldn't understand each other, that they all spoke in different languages. And as a result of this, they had conflict and, project over. And this is what's happening not just in our world today, but in our countries. So yeah, maybe in Mexico, everyone speaks Spanish. But it's no longer the case that everyone has a common language around maybe the Bible or certain stories. So maybe everyone in the United States speaks English, but no longer has a common language around stories, whether it's the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence. And if we are to regain our social glue, our connectedness, we must find, read, learn, and teach these common stories that talk about goodness, that give us that common language of kindness. We don't have that anymore, not within a country and not the world over.
Thank you, Tao. Héctor, por favor.
Sí, sí, buenas noches. Muy interesante el conversatorio. Tal vez hacer una pregunta muy puntual. Eh, el tema de la conducta narcisista, las raíces del narcisismo, es decir, quizá un enfoque totalmente diferente al concepto de la bondad y la generosidad. Es decir, el generoso disfruta, ¿verdad? Ayudar a otro, pero ¿y qué pasa en este caso donde en esta actitud de narcisista, digamos, predomina el egoísmo, predomina la falta de empatía, la falta de generosidad? Es decir, no creo que se interese por disfrutar ningún acto de generosidad. ¿Cómo enfoca la psicología positiva y la ciencia del bienestar este tipo de conducta? ¿Qué se puede hacer al respecto?
Arlene, do you want to take it or do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you can go first.
So, positive psychology or the science of happiness doesn't have a solution for everything. When it comes to narcissism, for example, the best way to treat it would be through, psychotherapy or maybe medication. So in this respect, I don't have a clear solution, but I do have some ideas which I'd like to share with you. Narcissism, as is the case with many of the mental disorders, takes something natural to the extreme. For example, depression. Sadness is natural. I mean, Hector, I'm sure you were sad yesterday or today. I was sad earlier today. We experience sadness every day. It's a natural human emotion. What is depression? Taking sadness to the extreme, where someone is sad all the time, where someone is so sad that they no longer have hope, that they feel helpless with their sadness. Or anxiety. I get nervous often. I'm anxious often. When does anxiety become a pathology, a mental disorder? When it goes to the extreme. It's the same with narcissism. You see, it's part of human nature to want to be perceived as good. It's part of human nature to like ourselves sometimes. It's part of human nature to want to show off, to want other people to like us. It becomes narcissistic when it becomes extreme. When I have, or when I become obsessed with other people liking me, and everyone has to agree with me, and I have to constantly show how amazing I am. So it takes something which is natural. Yeah, I want people to like me. I mean, who doesn't? It takes it to the extreme. Now, how do you deal with those extremes? Positive psychology, as a rule, tries to eliminate the darkness by introducing light. So to deal with sadness, instead of talking about the sadness, let's bring some laughter, some joy, some fun into life. And in the same way with narcissism, narcissists are all about focusing about the self. So let's bring some light. In other words, let's help them help others. And a few acts of kindness may help to shift the balance from extreme narcissism to perhaps less narcissism. Now, it's not easy. However, what positive psychology says is that we can have some impact by focusing on the positive, on positive acts of generosity and kindness, or positive acts in dealing with depression, of fun and enjoyment. And each act of fun and enjoyment, or each act of generosity and kindness, is like a small candle that may drive away some of the darkness. Is that the only thing that will help, or will that alone help? Probably not. You'll need more than that. But it's part of the effort, the overall effort that can make a difference.
Thank you, Tao. I know we have reached the hour. I don't know if you want to take one more question,
Yeah,
and then
please.
we would like to show everyone an interesting project that's beginning on February. So, Tuti, por favor. Y qué gusto saludarte, Tuti.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Tal. Hi, Arlen. Thank you so much. First, I want to express how I'm feeling in the last months, and then I would like to make a question. I want to go back for the webinar this morning when you mentioned about how it's important to education and to do the right education, and you use the word right, the kind education. And I have been always a true believer that education is important and it's critical for the human nature. And we think all of the people in this here think the same way. But I need to mention that in the last month, I have been very disappointed about the human nature. And it has been, it's incredible for me to see what has been going around the world. And Arlen was mentioning that it's, the world is like crazy. And you mentioned in the morning that I don't remember exactly how you mentioned, but you say something that the world is in danger. So we have questions about how today it's education around the world, who will be our leaders, all these political things about the world. And I want them to express that I am disappointed, and I have pain, and I have sorrow, and I am concerned about what's going on in many places of the world. I know, and as I mentioned, I'm very positive about how kindness is always bigger than evil and the good things. And I'm normally a very positive person, but I have a concern about, and it's so easy to get in a trend that it goes, and how so easy sometimes to not see what is truth or reality. And we all make mistakes, as you mentioned, that today I have a deeply, as I mentioned, a deeply disappointed. I'm disappointed. So that's how I want to express myself today. And I have a question. You just mentioned in this that there is a way how to help risk populations like poor populations, that sometimes by doing them to help others, you can make them a better person. And my question is, how do you think this could work in a terrorist groups or people like do normally bad things instead of good things? Thank you.
Okay, Arlen, I think we'll have to go till midnight, if you don't mind. Yeah, Tuti, this really is these are very big questions, and I can fully empathize and understand why you feel the way you feel these days. So I want to just say a few things. I said earlier that, positive psychology doesn't have answers for everything. And I don't think that the right way to deal with terrorists or murderers is by teaching them about happiness. You know, if Winston Churchill in 1940 or 41 said, let's talk and teach the Nazis about goodness and kindness, we wouldn't be having our conversation right now. Sometimes, unfortunately, war is necessary. And fighting is necessary. You know, freedom is not free, as the saying goes. The problem, though, or the challenge, is not the terrorists. We know how to fight terrorists, and, you know, some governments do it better than others, and they'll be defeated eventually. The problem is the support that terrorism gets from good people, people who really have good intentions, but just don't understand, because of education, what they are supporting or who they are supporting. You see, there are two paths that lead to the victory or triumph of evil. Two paths. One path is lack of education. Because when a group is not educated, they really don't know. They will follow whoever is the most charismatic or whoever makes them feel like they're right. They're not educated. They don't think deeply about matters. And that's why it's very easy for dictators to manipulate an uneducated population. And that's why dictators would usually not want to truly educate the population, because they can easily manipulate them. So that's one problem. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance, lack of education, will not lead us to a good place. But then there is another problem. Because education doesn't always lead to a good place. This morning I gave this example in our class. What is the most educated society of the 20th century? The society that produced the most philosophers, the most thinkers, scientists, artists. It was Germany. And it was also Germany that led to two of the greatest atrocities in human history. And they were educated. So on the one extreme, you have lack of education and ignorance. On the other hand, you have education of the wrong kind. Now, what is education of the wrong kind? Education that is not based on reality. Do you know the book 1984, George Orwell? In 1984, George Orwell says the following. He says, for a society to be free, for a society to be moral, 2 + 2 must equal 4. In other words, it has to be based on reality. 2 + 2 must equal 4. If in a certain society, sometimes 2 + 2 is 4, sometimes it's 7.5, you know, whatever. That's a society that's not based on reason. And it's a society where a terrorist can become the freedom fighter. The good may be evil because there are no truths. And who wins in that society? The most charismatic and the most powerful. It's a society where might means right. And here is where we come in, Tuti. Education is important. Education of the right kind. Education that teaches reality, where 2 + 2 = 4, always, everywhere. Where we study human nature. And we create a science of happiness which is based on human nature. Where we focus on those things that our nature desires, such as being kind and being good. And as Arlen pointed out, through action, reinforcing those natural inclinations. Because we have a natural inclination. You have it, I have it, we all have it. We have a natural inclination to want to do good in our world. But if we don't exercise that natural inclination, if we don't go out and do good, and this is what Arlen emphasized, the action. If we don't go out and do good, that inclination will dissolve, will melt, will go away. Just like we all have the potential for muscles. But if you don't use that arm, you're going to lose those muscles. We have the potential to be good and to be kind and to be helpful. We must go out and do it. And when we do it, because it's contagious, others will do it. And then we will become stronger and society as a whole will become stronger.
Yeah, and I must say also that this is why the importance of coming together with a community that has common goals, a community that is not only concerned, but is also active in promoting that common good that you're talking about. And I think part of what we do in Happiness Studies Academy in IBI is really building a community that is able to share not only tools, but also aspirations and concerns, and to work together to create what we want. Because actually in organizations, many people suggest, there is like a 58% of people who are resigning in silence. But those are the people that we need to get to in order for them to really become actively engaged in the workplace. And in the same way, though there is a huge amount of people in the world who are passive observers, who are not wanting to take the stand to really say, the common good is the good for all. We cannot start advocating for the good of some people while not really looking at the common humanity that we all share. So I think, the bystanders are the people who might need to have an education, maybe about worldly situations, to have more content behind, but also about the common values and the importance of taking a stand, because not speaking out and getting quiet, that's an action too. And it has an impact. So I know there are people with more questions, but we are really getting way past our hour of conversation with you, Tal. And before thanking you, I really want to share with you a video about Tal's work, and to then share with you the news of this new cohort that's starting in February. So please, Gigi and Clavers, can you share the video, please?
And this moment is a special moment, because at this moment, there is the potential that exists within our students to spread this change and to bring about a happiness revolution. A peaceful revolution that will increase levels of well-being around the world. A revolution that will generate not just more well-being, not just more happiness, but also more health and more goodness, more generosity, more kindness. This is about making the world a better place. This is about making a meaningful difference. And when I think about it, I know that this is the moment. Right now, right here, together. You're muted, Arlen.
I was so excited. So the next cohort for the certificate in happiness studies starts February 6th. We have here some students of our own that are already students in our certificate. I see people from Vietnam and Colombia and Costa Rica and Mexico and so many places. And I also see students from our master's program. And I just have to thank you, Tal, because you have, you are taking a stand and you are leading many of us to achieve and to build, the kind of world we want to live in. So I would like to invite you to share something that you would like to share about this beautiful work that you're doing around the world.
I ended that video with the word together. And that is the essence of what we do. I often talk to our students as well, and I say to them, look, the material that we study is really wonderful. Because we study Martin Seligman, who was your teacher, Arlen. We study Aristotle. We study Helen Keller. We study Lao Tzu. We really study the great mind. We study modern neuroscience. We study the great minds, the great hearts of human history. Of course, it's good material. But that's not the most important part of the Happiness Studies Academy. The most important part of what we do, whether it's HSA or IBI, the most important part that we do is we're creating a community of like-minded and like-hearted people who truly are concerned about making the world a better place, not just as a cliche, who truly are concerned about spreading happiness and goodness and kindness. And there is so much power in this togetherness. One person can and does make a big difference. We talked about the butterfly effect. But when you have 2 people, or when you have 200 people, that impact is exponential. And that is what is, for me, so important and so inspiring. And this is what gets me out of bed in the morning. Also, Tutti, during difficult times or challenging times, it's knowing that maybe I'm one candle, but together we're a torch, a sun, a force to be reckoned with. And I hope you join us and be part of what we're doing together, which is nothing short of the happiness revolution.
Yeah, we have over 1,000 students, people from over 80 countries, I believe, and the work, the support, and just the feeling, that you are not crazy if you have the desire to be happy, even within an imperfect world, to feel that there is a community of people who share this same longing makes you stronger and allows you to be even kinder than what you ever imagined and create those miracles on earth.
So thank you so much, Tal. Please write us with your questions. Please feel free to email us any other question that you have from this topic or from the certificate program. Please contact us. And I feel really honored, Tal, to be part of your team, to be also your student, and to walk with you this incredible path in this unperfect and amazingly beautiful world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Arlen, for this and for being a professor in our program and for all the amazing, kind, generous work that you do.
Thank you so much. And there was an invitation from Glavers, I believe, if you wanted to open your cameras. She wanted to take a picture. If you don't mind and you'd like that to happen, please do that. So thank you everyone so much for being here today. Thank you, Tal.
Thank you all.
Gracias, hasta luego, buenas noches.
Gracias, Arlen.
Ay, María Teresa, qué gusto verte.
Qué gusto escuchar a Tal Ben-Shahar. Y sí me gustaría saber un poco más de cómo estás haciendo, ¿qué? ¿Ok?
Claro, María Teresa, si quieres, nosotros vamos a mandar un correo y con mucho gusto ya tenemos tus datos, te contactamos, con muchísimo gusto.
Gracias, Arlen. Un abrazo con mucho cariño.
Igualmente.
Igual para Tal.
Gracias a todos, Agustín, Audrey.
Thank you, Tal.
Mi
Thank
mamá preciosa que está
Wow.
aquí.
Bye-bye.
Y qué linda su mamá. Qué linda la historia.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tal, Glavers, Gigi, thank you so much. Alma, que estén muy bien. Buenas noches.
Buenas noches, gracias.
Buenas noches. Good night.
Buenas
Bye-bye.
noches.
Bye.